the film Mask, you know that Cher turns in a stunning performance as the mother who's a flamboyant California biker with an affinity for drugs, who bravely raises her little son Rocky.
The film Mask made Rocky Dennis a household name and his mother Rusty an icon of unconventional motherhood. We saw a story of unconditional love conquering a devastating medical condition. But behind the Hollywood gloss, there was a far grittier reality. The thing is, before she passed away, Rusty finally confessed the parts of the story the cameras never showed.
Things that Rocky went through during the movie, they used some of Springsteen's things. One of them I think was growing up. Just things that he could relate to, which made a lot more sense than what they actually did.
The details she shared about Rocky's final, lonely hours and the true chaos of their home life dismantle the myth completely, revealing a heartbreaking story that is much harder to watch than the movie. The secret history of a legend. For millions, the story of Roy L. Rocky Dennis is the ultimate tale of triumph against all odds. It's a story cemented in pop culture by the 1985 blockbuster film Mask, where a young boy with a severe facial difference, played by Eric Stoltz, navigates life with humor and courage, supported by his fierce biker mom, played by Cher in an Oscar-worthy performance. The movie gave us an icon of resilience. It portrayed a world where love, no matter how unconventional, could overcome prejudice and a devastating medical diagnosis. It's an inspiring, feel-good story that left audiences in tears. The only problem? A huge part of it was a carefully crafted lie. You see, what many overlooked is that the Hollywood version was just that, a version. It was a story sanitized for mass consumption, designed to pull heartstrings and sell tickets. The real story, the one that existed long before the cameras started rolling, was infinitely darker, messier, and more tragic. And the person who held the keys to that truth was Rocky's own mother, Florence "Rusty" Tullis. For years, she allowed the myth to flourish. She watched as Cher portrayed her on the big screen, winning awards for a performance that captured her fire but glossed over her deepest flaws. But as the years went on and as she approached the end of her own life in 2006, Rusty began to peel back the layers of the legend she helped create. What she revealed was, to put it mildly, shocking. The heartwarming tale the world fell in love with was missing crucial, disturbing details. The thing nobody tells you is that Rocky's life wasn't just a struggle against a medical condition, it was a battle for survival in a home filled with chaos, substance use, and questionable characters. The movie showed a quirky, loving community of bikers who protected Rocky. The reality involved hard drugs and a lifestyle that was far from safe for a medically fragile child. Even more jarring was the truth about Rocky's final moments. The cinematic scene of Rocky passing away peacefully with his mother beside him never happened. It was a complete fabrication. The truth of where Rusty was on that fateful day and the cold, clinical fate of Rocky's remains is a gut punch that shatters the entire myth of Mask. This isn't the story of a Hollywood hero, it's the story of a boy whose real life was far more complex and heartbreaking than the legend would have you believe. Rusty's late-in-life confessions weren't just minor corrections, they were bombshells that recontextualized everything. They painted a picture not of a saintly mother, but of a deeply flawed woman who loved her son yet simultaneously exposed him to a world of instability. Her truth forces us to ask a difficult question. Why was the world so eager to accept the fairy tale? Perhaps it's because the reality of Rocky's journey is a far more uncomfortable story to face. The full story begins not with a movie, but with a shocking medical diagnosis. When doctors gave up, Rocky Dennis was born on December 4, 1961, looking like a perfectly healthy baby boy. For the first 2 years of his life, there was nothing to suggest the incredible medical journey that lay ahead. But then a series of persistent ear and sinus infections led his mother, Rusty, to seek more specialized medical advice at the UCLA Medical Center. An X-ray of his skull revealed abnormalities that stunned the doctors. They saw unusual calcium deposits, a sign that something was seriously wrong with his bone development. After extensive testing, they landed on a diagnosis so rare it was almost unheard of: craniodiaphyseal dysplasia. This wasn't some common ailment. It was a 1 in 22 million condition with fewer than 20 cases ever recorded in medical history. To put that in perspective, you are thousands of times more likely to be struck by lightning than to be born with this disorder. The condition, sometimes brutally called Leonidas, causes an uncontrolled buildup of calcium on the skull. This causes the facial bones to grow disproportionately, creating severe disfigurement. But the cosmetic changes were the least of the problems. The real danger was happening inside. The relentless bone growth put immense pressure on the brain and cranial nerves. The prognosis was horrifying. Doctors told Rusty that as Rocky's skull expanded, it would slowly crush his brain. They predicted he would lose his eyesight, then his hearing, and suffer from debilitating headaches and neurological decline. Their conclusion was blunt and cruel. Rocky would likely not live to see his 7th birthday. They advised her to institutionalize him, to essentially give up on him before his life had even truly begun. For any parent, this would be a devastating blow. But for Rusty, a woman who lived by her own rules, this was a declaration of war. She flat out refused to accept their verdict. She famously told the doctors they could take their predictions and shove them. She was taking her son home to live. This decision set the stage for a childhood that was anything but ordinary. Not the mother you saw on screen. The home that Rusty created for her sons, Rocky and his older half-brother Joshua, was a whirlwind of freedom and chaos. On the surface, it mirrored some of the bohemian spirit shown in Mask. Their home was a revolving door for members of the biker community, filled with music, laughter, and a defiant attitude toward mainstream society. Rusty was determined that Rocky would have a normal life, and to her, that meant treating him like any other kid. She pushed him to go to public school, to make friends, to ride bikes, and to never ever let anyone make him feel like a victim. She taught him to use his quick wit as a shield, disarming bullies with a joke before they could land a cruel remark. But here's where the real story takes a sharp turn from the Hollywood script. The biker family that surrounded them wasn't just a quirky group of outsiders. Many were heavily involved in a world of illicit substances, and Rusty was no exception. She struggled with dependency for much of her life, and their home was often a chaotic environment, far from the stable sanctuary a child with a life-threatening condition needed. While the movie portrays her as a fiercely protective mother, the reality was more complicated. Her lifestyle choices often put her sons in precarious situations. Many people are crazy about the idea of the free-spirited biker mom, but the truth was far grittier. Reports and interviews from those who knew them confirmed that their household was often unstable. This environment had tragic consequences that extended beyond Rocky. In 1987, Rocky's older brother Joshua passed away from complications related to AIDS at the age of 32. Joshua had a difficult life himself, reportedly following his mother into a lifestyle of substance use. His passing was another devastating blow for Rusty, one that was never mentioned in the film's tidy narrative. The fact is, the loving chaos celebrated in Mask was also a breeding ground for genuine danger and tragedy. This chaotic life built to a climax that was nothing like the movie's ending. A mother's greatest regret. The movie Mask presents Rocky's final day as a poignant, peaceful affair. After achieving his life goals and finding acceptance, he passes away in his sleep, and his mother discovers him the next morning, leading to a tear-jerking scene of a final farewell. It's a beautifully constructed Hollywood ending. It is also a complete fabrication. The truth of Rocky's passing on October 4th, 1978, at just 16 years old, is far colder and more heartbreaking. On that day, Rusty was not at home with her son. She was reportedly out with her boyfriend, dealing with her own personal issues, some of which were rumored to be legal in nature. She had left Rocky, who was feeling increasingly unwell, at home. He didn't pass away in the comfort of his mother's presence. He passed away alone. Rusty didn't discover him. Instead, she returned home to find that her son was gone, a reality that would haunt her for the rest of her life. This fact alone completely dismantles the central theme of the movie's ending: the unwavering presence of a mother's love at the final moment. But the story gets even colder. After he passed, Rocky was not buried in a sentimental ceremony. Instead, his body was donated to the UCLA Medical Center for scientific research. For years, his skull and medical records were studied by researchers hoping to understand more about his ultra-rare condition. His physical remains became a scientific specimen, a source of data rather than a memorial for a beloved son. While this contribution to science is undoubtedly valuable, it stands in stark contrast to the poetic ending the world came to know. There were no flowers, no gravestone, just a laboratory. Rusty eventually received her son's cremated ashes 7 years later, long after his story had been sold to Hollywood. This gap between the myth and reality leaves us with a profound question: a legacy of pain and science. The story of Rocky Dennis splits in two directions. One path leads to Hollywood, the version most people know, polished and glowing, where Rocky is a gentle hero and his mother Rusty is a flawed but fiercely loving woman who gives him the world. It's the version wrapped in soft light, backed by inspiring music, and built to make us feel good. Then there's the other version, the raw, painful truth of a real teenage boy who lived with a devastating condition, struggled through chaos at home, and ultimately passed away far too young and heartbreakingly alone. The thing is, most people prefer the myth. It's easier to swallow. It offers hope, redemption, and the comforting idea that love can conquer anything. But the real story? That one doesn't tie things up so neatly. It forces us to see Rusty not as a one-dimensional hero, but as a complicated woman, a mother fighting like hell for her son, but also fighting her own battles with addiction, instability, and heartbreak. And yet that's what makes the story so haunting. Was Rusty's wild, unorthodox love the reason Rocky lived twice as long as doctors said he would? Or did her chaos shorten his time by denying him the calm, steady life he needed? Maybe it was both. Because the truth about Rusty is that her flaws and her strengths came from the same fire. The same defiance that led her to challenge doctors and society also led her into destructive choices. She could be reckless and selfish one moment, then fiercely protective and selfless the next. That contradiction is what the movie glossed over. In Mask, she's the rough around the edges but golden-hearted mom who inspires everyone around her. In real life, things weren't that simple. Her world was often full of noise, drugs, fights, instability, and Rocky had to grow up inside that storm, and yet somehow he turned that storm into strength. He learned to joke, to laugh, to push back when people stared. He became tougher than anyone expected, and that toughness might never have existed without Rusty's chaotic love. But Hollywood doesn't like stories that messy. Audiences don't pay to see a boy die alone in a hospital bed while his mother is out battling her own demons. They want a noble ending, a single tear, a lesson about love and courage. So the truth was rewritten. In the film, Rocky's death is peaceful, surrounded by family and love. His story closes like a poem. But in reality, when he passed away, his body was sent to science, his skull and bones studied by doctors who were trying to understand the rare condition that shaped his face. It's not cinematic, but it's real. And that's the strange beauty of Rocky's legacy. It didn't fade when the cameras stopped rolling. His bones helped teach generations of medical students. His face, once seen as a tragedy, became a window into the mysteries of human development. And his story, both the myth and the truth, still inspires people to look deeper, to see beyond appearances. So maybe the Hollywood version isn't completely wrong. Maybe it captured something true, even if it wasn't factual. The love between Rocky and Rusty was real, it just lived in chaos instead of perfection. The defiance, the laughter, the stubborn refusal to give up. That was all them. The movie gave the world a fairy tale. Reality gave us something even rarer. Proof that courage doesn't always look noble and love doesn't always look clean. Rocky Dennis exists in two worlds. One belongs to Hollywood, a story of triumph that makes people cry in movie theaters. The other belongs to medicine, a story of science, pain, and resilience. Between them lies the real Rocky, the boy who endured, who laughed, who lived twice as long as anyone said he could. And maybe that's the real moral. Not that love conquers all, but that even in the messiest lives, courage still finds a way to shine through the cracks. Because sometimes the truth isn't beautiful, but it's real, and that's what makes it unforgettable. Was Hollywood right to sell an inspiring lie instead of the heartbreaking truth? Let us know your thoughts. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe for more hidden stories.